Now it's time for Movie Friends with your hosts Michelle and Seth. We're talking film without pretension. We're finding cats that are unexpected. We'll watch a movie, film, or schmovie. And we want you to join our journey. So subscribe and share this podcast, or this might just be the last of the Movie Friends. We're movie friends. We want to be your movie friends.
Welcome to Movie Friends. I'm here with my friend Seth Vargas, who has a short temper and a tendency to drool.
Wow. Hey, and I'm here with my friend Michelle Rubenstein, who learned to shoot at the 7-Eleven.
What's going on, Seth? How are you?
I'm doing quite well. I'm recovering from a cold.
Yeah, so you're a little nasally.
So if I sound more annoying than I normally do, that's why.
Nah, you just sound a little nasally, but I feel like across the country is freezing. Everywhere is cold and dry.
Absolutely. It was -3 when I woke up today.
Ooh.
Yeah, not good.
So since last week, super exciting things happened here over at Movie Friends.
A lot of exciting things, yeah.
We got 2 new patrons.
Whoa.
Welcome, Paul and Will. We're so excited to have you. What brought you? Is it the decoder ring? It has to be the decoder ring, right?
I would like to think that the decoder ring is pulling people in, but
wouldn't that
hard
be great?
to tell.
But in
Yeah.
1 week, we got 2 patrons, so we're really excited. Thanks for.
Yes, thank you, Paul and Will. Very exciting.
What else is happening around Patreon? What fun episode is coming out?
Well, not a very fun episode. This week,
Oh.
we're working on the movie Antichrist, directed by Lars van Trier.
Okay. Whoops.
But yeah, I do a show for Patreon with my wife, G. Marie, and it's called That's Messed Up. Basically, the criteria for that show is like movies that would never be on the main show of Movie Friends. So, and we've been on this weird kick of movies about like really messed up marriages, or like just like that dive into like all of the difficulty, intricacies of married life.
That kind of makes me want to listen. I don't want to watch the movies, but I would listen to that discussion.
Sure. Yeah. Check it out. What's going on with you?
Not much. I'm kind of bummed that trilogy month is over.
Yeah, I thought that this was a fun one.
This month was good. And it's special because we're finishing series, and I really like that.
Yeah. In one way, though, I'm a little sad.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I said I'm like bummed. But I love finishing, but it also feels very sad. Like to leave Godfather feels really sad. It's like, Michelle, you can just go rewatch. And it's like,
right.
Who's going to talk to me about it more? Everybody has seen it. And then I watched The Offer and I finished that series and we really liked that. And then we'll finish Shrek. I'm not letting that go. So
yeah, that's different though.
But today we get to talk about Back to the Future Part 3.
Well, before we get into that.
Yes.
Speaking of saying goodbye and being bummed out, we don't normally mention the passing of movie makers on the show, but David Lynch passed away. It hit me way harder than I would have thought. You know?
Can you talk about your relationship and how you found David Lynch?
I mean, Lynch is one of those. I saw a tweet that said Lynch is one of those like baby's first weird director kind of guy,
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized as the days progressed around his death was how much he inspired so many different people. I related it to the end of The Wizard of Oz. So, Dorothy wakes up and she's like, oh, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. And it's this strange mixture of snapping back to reality, but also having realization at the same time, And it was like, oh, this was David Lynch, and this was Lynch, and this was Lynch, and all of these different artists were all inspired by him. And whenever someone passes on the internet, there's always a mixture of news. It's like, I'm glad they died because they were terrible. But this was just like overwhelmingly just people being like, what a huge loss to the world of art And yeah, I don't normally get emotional, when these people die, because I don't know them, I appreciate their work, but it's like, all right, I feel like every other day I'll see an article that's like, the person who played the bus driver on Hill Street Blues passed away. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to hear about every person dying that I've ever known existed for the rest of my life. It's just this constant reminder of like, everyone's dying. So I just kind of distanced myself from that. But with Lynch, it was upsetting. It was, yeah.
Did you watch any of his stuff to kind of mourn?
I did. I watched a few of his shorts.
Mm-hmm.
There's this little thing that he made with Netflix called What Did Jack Do? And I would recommend anybody, if you haven't seen it, check it out. And it's David Lynch playing a police detective. It's a one little room, and he's questioning a guy about murder, and the guy happens to be played by a little monkey with a human mouth.
Oh.
It's so funny. It's so interesting. Yeah, check it out.
Is it still on Netflix?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to watch that.
Yeah, What Did Jack Do?
What did Jack do?
And I watched that one specifically because it's mostly him. He's starring in it and acting in it. And
wow.
yeah, remember when we did Mulholland Drive?
Oh, sure.
And we were just living in Lynch land for a bit?
I mean, my introduction to Lynch was Blue Velvet. Years and years ago. That was the first movie we covered on my old movie podcast.
That's right. If you didn't know, Michelle had another movie podcast.
I did. And we also watched that in, did I watch that in school? I don't remember now.
Like high school?
College. Yeah, I don't remember if I watched that in college, but I definitely watched it for the other movie podcast I was a part of.
Great movie.
Yeah, it was good.
Anyway, rest in peace, David Lynch.
Rest in peace.
All of us should take a page out of his book and just make something. Make what you want, His first film, Eraserhead, took him 5 years.
Wow.
Run out of money and then have to call everybody back, film a little bit more. So if you're working on a project and it stops, don't stop. It might take 5 years to finish it, but without Eraserhead, we wouldn't necessarily have everything that we had after that. So keep going.
It's a good lesson. It's a good It's a good reminder, actually, as a creative person. Just keep going.
Speaking of keep going.
Yeah.
If you go to the end of this episode, way after the credits, you're going to hear a message for Michelle's Inner Circle. It's our weekly encoded message. And our patrons have been playing along. There's some interesting theories flying about. And
you really stumped them last week.
It's a lot of fun.
It's fun for me too. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
But you have to wait till after the credits at the end of the episode to hear it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Friends of the movie friends. Do you like talking about and debating if what won at the Oscars actually deserved to? Well, I've got the show for you. I'm Andrew from the Revisionist Almanac, and my podcast uses the luxury of hindsight to determine what the Academy got right, and more importantly, what they got wrong. This show is a monthly interactive experience where I dive into a past year with a rotating group of guests to look at what won Oscars for picture, director, and acting, revise those winners, and then let the actual winners battle our revised picks in online polls where you, the listener, get to have your voice heard. So come check out the show on all podcast streaming platforms and find the show on every social media platform using the handle Rev Almanac. I can't wait to see you there.
Well, I feel like this is a big one to end the month on.
Yes, for this show and for us and for you.
Yeah.
You're the Back to the Future head.
I do. I love Back to the Future so much. This is also our first Western.
Yeah.
In a way.
Western question mark. Because it's not really.
It's not.
It doesn't have a lot of the kind of hallmarks of a Western film, but it's set in the Old West.
It's set in the Old West. So yes, we're going to be talking about Back to the Future, Part 3 from 1990, directed by Robert Zemeckis, written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, cinematography by Dean Cunley, composed by Alan Silvestri, edited by Harry Karamidas and Arthur Schmidt, costume design by Joanna Johnston. Starring Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, Mary Steenburgen, Tom Wilson, Leah Thompson, and Elizabeth Shue. Seth, would you like to read us our summary?
Yeehaw!
There you go.
When Marty McFly discovers that Doc Brown is stranded in the Wild West, he travels back to 1885 to rescue him. But things go awry when Doc falls in love, and Marty gets on the bad side of Buford Mad Dog Tannen, a gunslinging outlaw. With a broken DeLorean and a dangerous showdown looming, Marty and Doc must outsmart the Old West to make it back to the future. Part 3.
I know. Part 3. Will they make it back in this third installment?
Will they make it back? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get into our discussion, we're going to guess and write down what we think the other is going to rate this movie. And
Yep.
this year, we're competing for pickles.
That's right.
And so the pickle tally, as it stands right now, Seth has won one pickle.
Yep.
And I have none, sadly.
There's one pickle on the table.
One pickle. How you feeling? How you feeling this week with rating?
I'm not sure because honestly, I can't remember how you rated the first two.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I remembered like, oh, Michelle rated both of them 5 stars, like super easy. But I can't even remember. I probably should have gone back and looked, but that seems like cheating.
To be honest, I don't even remember.
Sure. Well, hey, there you go. Feels kind of like a shot in the dark, but I'm locked in.
I'm also locked in. So tell me when you first saw part 3.
I saw part 3 as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we were Back to the Future house, and I hated the third one. Like, I just was like, why is this a Western? What are we doing? This one is so much more boring. And I can tell you the reason I thought that, I was thinking about, like, why did I not like this? This is funny. I guarantee you it's just the color palette, that it's all like browns and muted, and there's not like flashy things happening on screen. I can almost guarantee that's why. Like young Seth brain was just not lit up. You know?
I wonder if that was young Michelle brain too.
Mm-hmm.
Because I also, as a kid, really just didn't enjoy this installment. I was bored. Nothing like captivated me. And I don't know if it's because I didn't watch Westerns, if I didn't grow up with the genre, right? Mm-hmm. So like this did nothing for me. I always chose the first and second and just would kind of disregard the third.
Yep. Well, it's like the first one has like rock and roll, literally rock and roll. And in this one, it's just kind of like country fair music.
Right.
You know? So the two aren't, it's just not as grabby.
Right. Yeah, because the first one, and also aesthetically, we go back to the 50s. And so that's,
Mm-hmm.
as a kid and a young person, like I loved seeing that aesthetic. And then in the second one, we're going 2015. So you're like seeing future stuff or what the future would be. That was 2015.
2021.
2021?
I believe it's 2021.
No, they travel from 1985 to 2015.
Wow, where did I get 2021?
To prevent Marty's son from sabotaging the McFly family's future. Because it's like,
right.
it's 1985,
right,
1955, 2015, and then 1885.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm like, is it 20? Can you do a search quick and make sure we're reading the same thing?
All right, let's see here. Well, according to IMDb plot summary, they go to 2015. Yeah. No, I was wrong. No.
Okay.
Sorry. Fake news.
But like, fake news. On that though, like we've seen these movies, right? A bunch of times.
Yeah.
As a kid and as a teenager, and then we've covered both of them on this show. Even covering them, we're still like, wait, what's the time happening?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like in part 2, we really were trying to figure out the plot.
Yeah.
And we felt like it was very chaotic.
Yes.
And I think it's important to note that part 2 and part 3 were made back to back.
Correct. Yep.
And Zemeckis even admits to like part 2 is a little funky, not great, because I couldn't focus full-heartedly on it. He's editing part 2 while part 3 is being shot.
Yeah.
And I think this is an interesting way to do this. So the Bobs, they make a call to Universal and they give their happies and crappies. And they're like, the crappy is we can't make part 2 for the summer of 89, but are happy is that we can have part 2 ready for Thanksgiving 89, and then part 3 can come out summer of 90, and so our audience doesn't have to wait so long.
Okay.
So, like, I would think that being on the production of this, there's probably, like, obviously the pros and cons. The pros is, like, you're in the Back to the Future verse, you're in the world, everybody's working as a team, and then, of course, the con is, like, this is probably really grueling, and you're kinda stretched thin here.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would not want to. How long was the production?
It was 5.5 months, for part 2, and then part 3 was 5.5 months with, like, a 3-week hiatus, but Zemeckis was
Between the two?
Yes.
No way. Yeah, no way.
Yes, and
No
so
way.
Zemeckis he would, like, be in the editing bay and then fly to do directing and then fly back, like, for months this was going on.
No, I'd be like, I need an editing bay where I'm filming. Like, sorry, but you need to move everything to where I am.
Yeah, and so, like, story-wise, did you feel watching as an adult that part 3 was easier to follow than the other 2?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'll hold off until the very end to my thoughts on the connection to some of the stuff in two.
Okay.
But I should say, you asked me like when did I first watch this? I like this movie so much more now as an adult. And when I rewatched it, I was like, I guess I just couldn't believe it, like how much they slow things down and like give room for Doc and Marty to breathe, and we're having like love scenes with Doc Brown. Like, it's so cool that it's not just like going from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing, where two feels like it's it's a lot. It's a whole lot, right?
Yeah, because we're in 85, then we're in
Mm-hmm.
2015, then we have
Mm-hmm.
to go back to 1955.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're stuck there. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's so
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad.
no,
But
it's not bad. It's just a lot.
going so far into the past that everything that you're doing isn't connected to one of the other time periods
Yeah.
is definitely refreshing. It's a slower pace. And it feels like after, two huge adventures with Doc and Marty, that they've kind of relaxed a lot on their whole, like, if you see your other self, the whole universe will explode. Now they're just like, yeah, let's take a picture by this big clock. no, no one will ever see it.
I know it's
Kind of
kind
a
of
thing.
like that logic doesn't matter anymore.
They just don't. They don't. They don't
Also,
care as much about it, and it's nice. And one of the things that I've been saying lately about time travel movies is I hate when we get so bogged down by the rules in a time travel movie. It's fun that everything buttons up neatly and nicely, and there's little paradoxes and there's things. Those things can make it fun, but it can also make it just like, oh, just go into the past and whatever, go on a date with your mom, who, like, that alone is an interesting concept. I don't need for there to be all of these like domino effects.
yeah, but I think that's crucial for the whole. If you mess with the past, it is going to affect the future logic.
Yeah, but not like into it, like I said, it just feels like everything is connected, and and then two movies happening at the same time. And while that's cool and entertaining, it does feel like a bit of a workout, where three doesn't feel like a workout. It feels like a nice send off to characters that you like.
I agree. And also, just the landscape is what you were saying, like,
Hmm.
kind of like why we probably didn't like it as kids because it's so blah, but it's so refreshing to watch this now as an adult and to appreciate how different the landscape is and how they built in 1885 Hill Valley in the countryside of Sonora,
Hmm.
California. And what I didn't know this, which I found really interesting, which was one of the earliest locations that was discovered when looking for new sets of films, was that area
Hmm.
in California, which is really cool. And I just feel like also this is just an overall love letter and homage to Western films too. Like
Sure, sure.
everybody was so excited to be a part of a quote unquote Western type
Hmm.
of film. I think it's great.
Yeah, and the whole
as an
Clint Eastwood
adult,
of it all.
huh?
The whole Clint Eastwood of it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really fun. And as an adult, I also like love this movie, and rewatching it for our show, I was like, I'm tearing up. Why am I tearing
Mhm.
up? You feel the emotion of it as an adult. It's just so good.
Yep.
But
And yes, there's Biff, or Mad Dog 10, and yes, there's like a quote unquote villain in the movie, but he is, I feel like, the side problem where the main problem is gasoline, train, 88 miles an hour, like figuring the stuff out, He's almost like an annoyance, but their main
yeah,
problem is like, how can we outsmart the Old West and get back home? And that is more interesting to me than just here's this bad guy, which feels like the second movie.
right.
And I think we said that like 2 feels like Biff's movie.
Yeah, and the first one is Marty's dad's movie.
Yep. And we love Tom Wilson, and he is so good in 2, playing like 3 different parts. But yeah, it's very much like a villain movie, and I don't think that this one is. It's like slow and meditative, and
Yeah.
for
And
a blockbuster,
it
you know what I
looks
mean?
great. Do
It looks
you
good.
agree that
Yeah.
this looks good for
Yeah, it looks good.
1990?
Yeah.
I mean, we built practical sets. We're doing practical effects, which you and I love.
Mm-hmm.
I also love the way this movie is set up, because we end with Marty getting a mysterious letter from Western Union
Yep.
from Doc,
Yep.
right? And so Doc gets sent back to 1885. And while he's there, he writes Marty this letter and instructs Western Union, which is so funny when you think about it. You need to give this to this person on November 12th, 1955.
Yep.
And so Joe Flaherty, who we love,
Mm-hmm.
rest in peace also,
Yes, rest in peace.
he's the one to deliver this letter. And so Marty receives the letter and finds 1955's Doc to explain to him what's going on. He received a letter from his future self. So I love that we see Marty interacting with a different version of Doc. It's so fun to me. And this is how
Yep.
we set up this film. And we learn that the DeLorean is hidden. Here's instructions of where it is. You can put it back together, use it, get back to 1985, but destroy the DeLorean and make sure you take care of Einstein. And then, like, the end of this letter that he sent to
It's
Marty,
great. Yeah.
this is where I cried.
Yeah.
Just talking about friendship. Yeah.
Yeah, in 1955, Doc is like, "Oh, I didn't know I could write like that." And Marty's like, "Yeah, Doc, it's good stuff."
It's a good Marty. That's a good Marty, Seth.
But it is good stuff, and that's like, if I had like a main point of how I feel about this movie, it's that we love Doc and Marty, and this movie gives us so much of Doc and Marty together.
Yeah.
And like, how wise of them to not be like, okay, 2 ramped it up. In 3, we're going to ramp it up even more. No, they're like, we're going to pump the brakes, actually. And, in 2, there was so much CGI and glitz and glamour and boom, boom, boom. And, I think that guy stole that guy's wallet.
We love that guy, though.
we love, wallet guy rules. But they pulled it way back, and you get this beautiful letter to Marty from Doc. And then,
I mean, the other source of conflict here is Marty discovers that Doc was shot 6 days after writing this letter. And so he must go back to 1885 to save Doc.
Yes. Yeah. And again, like, Marty and Doc, through 1 especially, it was like, oh, everything, the universe is going to explode if you eat the wrong Tic Tac, right? In this one, Marty's like, Doc, look, you die like a week after sending this letter. And he's like, I bet you should go save me. Like, they just, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like Back to the Future 1 Doc would have been like, Marty, we can't mess with anything. If it's the way it's supposed to be, that's how it's got to be. This time around, they're like, yeah, go save me, please. That sucks. I don't get shot in the back. That's no future, I think is
Yeah.
what he says.
I love the shot of Marty going to 1885, opening up in that landscape
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
the middle of a cavalry pursuit. That I mean, and also I don't know why this struck me, but I wrote it down that they used a real bear.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
so interesting to me.
It's
It's
a
just
it's a
yeah.
funny detail because Marty notices that the DeLorean has sprung a leak. And so in my head, I'm like, oh my God, grab something and save the gasoline, right? But that would make it so that there's no movie. And so instead, they're like, how are we going to get Marty away from the DeLorean leaking? Oh, a bear. We'll put a bear in there. Sure.
Yeah. It's great. How did you feel about that opening scene of setting us up for 1885 of where he landed?
Well, it's funny because, they go to a drive-in
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, Doc, I'm going to hit those Indians. And he's like, no, Marty, you got to think four-dimensionally. They won't be there. And of course, they are there, but they're real.
Mm-hmm.
I also really appreciated how Doc dressed Marty like a Western that he would have been familiar with in these like bright colors and like tassels and
Like
stuff.
Howdy Doody.
And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, haven't you ever seen a Western before? And Marty's like, haven't you ever seen a Western before? Like, what are you talking about? That was a funny little like movie history joke that kind of doesn't, I'm sure goes over, most people's heads, certainly children sitting there watching, the new Doc and Marty movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I did find that pretty funny. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you feel about Marty's alias in this film is Clint Eastwood?
Right. So what is he? So he's Calvin Klein in the first one.
Yep.
And then in the second one, I think he also goes by another name.
I couldn't remember if we were still Calvin Klein because he goes back to the dance.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't he still Calvin Klein?
Right. So there's a few running gags throughout all three movies.
Yeah, they're like franchise trademarks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Manure, obviously.
Yep.
But yeah, Clint Eastwood, and then later on in the movie, he's dressed like Clint Eastwood's character from the Man with No Name trilogy, and it's funny.
Yeah,
Did you?
they got clearance from Clint Eastwood.
Oh yeah.
He was pretty yeah, they asked if they could use his name and he was tickled by it, so he said yes.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Mhm.
I mean, at this point, Eastwood is 1990. He's directing movies at this point, so that's pretty funny. Now, I had completely just this left my mind. Marty starts dancing,
Doing the moonwalk?
doing the moonwalk, and he's like silently, like very quietly singing Billie Jean to himself as he's doing it. And then he
Yeah.
like spins, and one of
Yeah.
the guys sitting there is like, "Oh my God." Like, and I thought, like, yeah, if you were in 1885 and someone busted out the moonwalk, yeah, you'd drop dead. I think that'd be the most amazing thing you'd ever seen.
Uh-huh. There's a lot of things I thought of if they saw what was happening from 1985 happening in 1885. I mean, the Nikes, just the type of shoe they make a comment on, that dancing, all of it. Like, really, I'm like, my mind would explode. We get to meet Seamus, which is the long lost relative of Marty. So here's like kind of another franchise trademark of Michael J. Fox playing a family member. What do you think of Seamus and his Irish accent?
I liked both of them, honestly.
And Leah Thompson?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think if this movie could have done anything better, it'd be giving Leah Thompson like a little bit more to do.
I agree.
And it might be like a little weird of a complaint. I don't know, but this time around, I was like, oh, Leah Thompson, she's actually kind of good in this role. Like, I wish that the McFlys had a little bit more to do in the story, but
It's not
whatever.
really about them.
It's not really about them. But I do like it. I mean, Michael J. Fox's Irish accent is, it's like my Irish accent, you know, like it's not very good.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think that they were just like caricatures. Like they felt like real people. You know, her getting mad that he invites him to stay and thinking that it's going to bring a curse on their family. And yeah, I think that there was room there for them to be kind of dumb and silly and kind of like punchlines, but I liked them. Yeah, I liked them. What about you?
To me, everybody worked. I mean, Buford, Mad Dog,
Yeah.
he worked for me. Seamus works for me. Leah Thompson coming back works for me. Even having Strickland come back and be the marshal, like this all worked for me. They felt like their own characters. And again, and I said this to Seth earlier in the week, I was like, I don't know if the other movies we covered this month were just not good, or if like Back to the Future is just really good, part 3, I mean, or if I just love this movie. I can't tell because everything, this just felt really good to watch. So I'm like, is this good? I don't know. It's been a rough month. So even though we had fun, we said at the top of the show, like we're sad to leave it. But yeah, I feel like I'm a little biased about it. But I couldn't help but laugh. And I felt this way in the other two. Like when Marty's sitting at the table with Seamus, it's like, wouldn't Seamus just be like, you look like me without any facial hair?
Yes. And that is actually exactly what I thought this time around. I was like, yeah, one of you has like a beard and a bowler hat, but you
look the same.
I mean, I guess back then you might not be as familiar with your face, you know?
What does that mean?
Well, mirrors weren't, you know, everywhere, and the mirrors that did exist weren't, you know, super clear, and photographs, and so you would see your reflection in water. And
I never ever had that thought before.
now Michelle's like, actually, he wouldn't recognize himself.
I'm going to be thinking about this forever. Not that this has anything to do with this movie, just like in general. People did not look at themselves.
Not as much, no.
Wow.
Yeah. And not as clearly and not as often, and you know what I mean? But his wife would know what he looks like. And so she'd be like, you know, Seamus, you look like that guy.
You put on a mustache. He looks just like you.
Yep.
We touched upon Mad Dog a little bit, but what'd you think of Tom Wilson's portrayal of him?
I love Tom Wilson. Like, we love him in Freaks and Geeks. Absolutely. You know, like he is a caricature and he is super one note in this. He might stand out the most from the tone of the rest of the movie to me, but he works to give Marty's big lesson, which is just because somebody calls you a coward, you don't need to respond. And just because somebody challenges you, you don't need to respond. And we see that in the first one, and then we see that from, you know, Marty of every age in the second one. And so he finally learns in this one, he can just be like, no, I'm not going to do a gun duel with you just because you call me out.
Just because you call me yellow.
Yeah. And then, you know, he gets the manure at the end, and
I like it. I think it's a good way to wrap it up.
Sure.
Like at this point, we're expecting some form of Biff. And so to have this type of character in the West and how he would be, it's fun. It's really fun. And he's just so stupid.
Very stupid. Yeah. When he's counting to 10 and he has to look to his friend for the next number.
I loved reading about how much the cast enjoyed learning how to ride horses and lasso and get to practice. And They described it as being away from the sets that they were used to, as this was kind of relaxing to be out there.
Interesting.
Yeah. Kinda like what you were going with, and you were saying how this movie just feels like we're taking a breath, and it is kind of a
Hmm.
change of pace, and I think that's reflected by the cast as well.
Yeah. And again, like, what an odd thing to do with your third movie.
So odd.
Like, third movies, that's for making it bigger and more epic and adding more and more. And they're just like, no, we did that with our second one.
Right.
In this one, we're actually going so far away that no one knows anyone. And, now it's not Marty meeting his uncle, it's Marty meeting his great 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 grandfather.
Who's a
And
baby.
his great grandfather is a baby.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do like that we get to see the clock tower, and
Sure.
it's like everything just feels so familiar to us.
Hmm.
And because I love Doc so much, I love that this story involves him more.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
and I love the love story element. I love that we get the character of Clara. I think she's
Hmm.
awesome.
Yep.
She's
Yep.
so great. I love that she's a school teacher. She loves science. She loves uh Jules Verne. She's just
Hmm.
the perfect counterpart for Doc. And she's just like badass the way she rides the horses, the way we'll get to the train sequence, but that
Hmm.
whole time she's on the train it's just good stuff. It was
Hmm.
just a really good new character to add in for your final movie.
Yeah, it's tough, you know, being like, all right, here's a new person. You know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't feel out of place because they're in a new place. And so, okay, it makes sense to add somebody in now. Yeah, if this took place between, 1985 and 2015, and they were suddenly like, oh, and by the way, here's our next door neighbor you've never seen. Or like, Marty had a brother you've never heard of. That's a little harder to believe. But here, new place, new people, makes total sense. And Mary Steenburgen rules.
She's so good.
She's great in a lot of different things. Great in Philadelphia as the prosecuting attorney. Oh my God, she is like chilling how just cold and mean she is in that movie. And then, of course, as Miss Sarah Davis in one of my favorite movies ever, Clifford.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
She has quite the range.
Quite the range. And she's great in this. And in the beginning, Doc is talking about Jules Verne, and he's talking about reading science fiction and how those things helped inspire him as a kid. And again, we're kind of like introducing new ideas late in the game, but I think it's more so just that this is Doc's movie, more
Mhm.
so.
Mhm.
And in the first one, Doc is so memorable, but for the most part, it's Marty and his dad, and Marty and his mom, and Doc is like a definitely supporting character, but he's not in it as much. And then in this one, he gets good love scenes, and they don't just make him, you know, bumbling, stupid Doc. Oh, I'm so awkward with women. Oh, like when they're sitting there looking at the moon and talking about books and talking about things, I was like, this is so good. Like it's
It's
so
so
and it
good.
and it's so nice of the people who made these characters to not just like suck them dry and make Doc stay the bumbling fool guy, great Scott, blah blah blah. Blah. Obviously we get a little bit of that in this, but he gets a life. Like Doc gets a life in this movie. Obviously, hey, sometimes there's characters who die and not everybody has a happy ending, and but for a character that you like, what what a great send off this movie is for him.
Yeah. It's what I wanted. The thing though, like to get into like discussions of we just should let things go, and we can.
Hmm.
But like Clara, the way on Doc's tombstone it reads like shot in the back because he
Yeah.
owed Mad Dog
80
80
bucks.
bucks,
Yeah.
left behind his beloved Clara,
Yeah.
right? And so we're like, who's Clara? Who's Clara? He's like, I'm not going to fall in love in like 5 days or whatever. It's not science.
Right.
And it happens. And he ends up rescuing her. And in the future, a ravine was named after her because she was supposed to die.
Mm-hmm.
She does not die. And so the fact that like that part doesn't affect the future.
Right.
And there's other things to come like in the end where it's just like, nah, you can write your own future. It hasn't been written yet. We just have to let it go. But that part I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
The hoverboard also works. And I was on Reddit forums, okay, reading about this, about how the hoverboard works in 1885. And what I read was Marty and Doc didn't do anything to interfere with the invention of the hoverboard. And so that technology essentially would always work
Okay.
no matter where it is in the timeline.
Okay. Maybe the hoverboard was made in Denmark, you know?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And then Ant was like, "Oh, probably physics.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Well,
you
yeah.
know, the force of the speed of the train and the air, and
Right.
it kind of just worked." And I was like, "Okay, sure. I'm gonna
Right.
let it go because I love it."
Right.
You know? But I'm still curious about it.
Yeah, like they save her from going down the ravine, right?
Right,
So her name is like Clara
Clayton.
Clayton. So in 1955 and 85, they call the ravine Clayton Ravine. And Marty says a lot of students have wished that their teacher would go down the ravine. Okay. So that means that in 1985, before the time travel starts, Clara died when she arrived at the town.
Yep.
Okay. So
And here it goes.
so but when they go back to 1955, the tombstone says it's so hard. It's like
I know.
it's like rice falling through my fingers. The tombstone says beloved Clara, but that tombstone existed in 1955, and that doc knew that it was Clayton Ravine. So how could she have made that tombstone if she died in that accident on day one?
Right.
You know what I mean?
But right. Right. Yes.
Because they change
But then
whatever.
okay. And wait. I wanna go to the train sequence, but
Sure.
is there anything you want to talk about before we go there? I mean, we get some great townsfolk.
One of the things that struck me was I loved the sense of scale in this movie. You know, we get the bigger barn experiment lab thing, which they're, you know, where they were working on stuff prior was always kind of like smaller. There's a shot towards the beginning of this when they go to the library. It's this big overhead shot that makes them look like tiny people, and you see like the moonlight coming in through the windows. And I was just like, why would they do this? Like, why would they go to such great lengths to do this like really specific, difficult shot just as they're going through like old records in a library, you know? So I want to give them credit for making the movie look good and not just in special effect shots or in like a wow kind of a way. Like in small moments, they go harder than they need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
So the townsfolk that hung out in the saloon,
Yeah.
they're famous actors who have been in westerns.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Pat Buttram, we know his voice. He's done so many character voices, and Harry Carey Jr. and Dub Taylor. I love that they included them in that. I wouldn't have known that they were
Yeah.
a part of Westerns, but knowing that, I just appreciate that they were in this.
And it's funny because they play like a little like Greek chorus
Yeah.
type characters who they're just kind of sitting and observing and making fun of them, and you know, it's a nice touch. Yeah. I also wanted to point out Doc has this huge machine that makes like a single tiny little piece of ice. It makes the same sound effects that the everlasting gobstopper machine makes in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, which also is this huge big machine that produces this like tiny little thing. So I thought that was a fun nod to, you know, great movie. I think my favorite line in the movie when Buford is outside, Marty says to the barkeep, "Hey, you got a back door to this place?" And he says, "Yeah, it's in the back."
So good.
And it's not, they don't like pause a beat and
No.
wait for the laugh. It's delivered. And like, it's such a smart, subtle joke that I almost was like, wait, maybe that's not a joke. Maybe I'm just reading into it. Like, of course your back door would be in the back, but I think it is
No, I think
intended to
it's
be
a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Bobs like to put in jokes like this.
Mhm.
The more I read about them, and especially learning about their working relationship, it's kind of like bit on bit. And if they
Mhm.
both agree on it, they'll write it down. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that
So
line.
good.
It's pretty awesome.
I think my favorite line is when we get to the pivotal train sequence,
Mhm.
and Marty and Doc get on and they hold up guns, and the
Yeah,
conductor's like, "Is
yeah.
this a robbery?" And they're like, "No, it's a science experiment." I was like, "This is so good. I love it. I want to say this so bad to
Yes.
someone one day."
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. And so the whole thing is they have to get the DeLorean up to 88 miles per hour.
Right.
And so they're like, the only way we can do this is we can use the train. The train can get up to that. We're just going to have to like alter it.
Mhm.
And so Doc has these special Presto logs that are
Mhm.
chemically treated, and they can switch the tracks, and like a split second before the track ends and would go over is when the DeLorean would hit 88 miles per hour and essentially shoot into 1985,
Mhm.
where the tracks will be built in the future and everything will be seamless. However, this sequence is so stressful
Yes, very stressful.
and it looks so good.
Mhm.
And I think it's perfect.
Mhm.
And they used miniatures, which we love.
Yes, yes.
Oh
And
man,
and it looks great. I
it looks
think
so good.
I never would have known that this was miniatures. Never in a million years would have thought that.
It's just it's magic. It's
Mhm.
magic.
And kind of about my point, how like Buford is a bad guy, but he's kind of the side quest, right? Think about this. Think about this. In just, you know, defying blockbuster tropes. You've got a third act action sequence, explosions and this and speed and handing off with no bad guy. All of the tension comes from this is literally a science experiment. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And like watching it this time around, I was like, oh, that's right. There's no one chasing them. There's no, oh my God, Marty, look up ahead. Workers on the thing. Like, there's nothing. It's so crazy, but this is the plan. Like, the plan is going exactly how they wanted it to. Obviously, Clara shows up and that adds a wrinkle to it, but like, it's crazy. Just, they are crazy what they're doing.
Well, yeah, but it's a race against the clock.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have to get back to 1985.
Okay, now let me ask you this.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
You and I are in 1885, right?
Yeah.
We figure all this stuff out. We say, okay, from this switch in the rail to this bridge, we can do it. We go out there and we see the bridge isn't built yet. The bridge is going to take a year. Are you waiting just a year Or are you like, nah, we're gonna do it in a week and maybe die?
I mean, that is brought up, and Marty's like, we can't wait a year.
Why? I would.
I know, because when in the beginning, when Marty gets the letter, we learn that Doc has been in 1885 for 8 months.
Mhm.
But it doesn't feel like that because time,
No, yeah.
because, well, this is happening right after. So what I'm saying is like time has no time.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? So
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying is I probably would wait because how much could I screw up in a year for my future self? I
Mhm.
guess a lot, maybe.
It's just like, hey, if this bridge is built, we'll have so much longer of a track to hit the 88 miles. Like, and I'm not saying that this is any kind of like plot hole thing.
No,
It's
I
just
get it.
thinking if you and I were back there, I'd be like, all right, look, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're going to invent a log splitter. We're going to help these guys build this bridge. And we'll do it, but we're going to
Yeah.
wait till then.
Yeah.
I noticed this time around too, this is the kind of franchise stuff that doesn't bother me. By the end of this movie, the DeLorean has parts from 1955, 1985, 2015, and 1885. All 4 time periods are like now on the car. And I feel like in a modern movie, that would have been like yelled out at you, and I don't know, it just wouldn't have been done in like a subtle way. But I realized it as he rolls in at the end. I was like, oh my God, like each time period, Doc and Marty have worked on the car, fixed it in different time periods with different ways. It has train track wheels now. Like that's cool because the
It's really
DeLorean
cool.
is also like the central iconic image from this series. And it gets a little touch of each time period that it visits. That's
Yeah,
cool.
it is cool. It's really cool. To go back to the train sequence and when Clara, she shows up. Okay, so Doc goes to Clara earlier and says, I have to leave. And she says, tell me why you're leaving. And he tells her the truth. And she obviously doesn't believe him. It's like, who do you think I am? I'm not going to believe like a science fiction story. And then she takes off for San Francisco, finds out on the train, overhears about Doc explaining about a woman that he loved and so forth. Okay, so she makes her way to the train and she's hanging on. At one point, she is hanging upside down by her dress. And Aunt was like, were dresses stronger in the 1885s? Like what?
Things used to be made with quality, you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But this is great. This is so great. And when Doc obviously decides he's going to save her, and his first thought is like, well, she'll just come with us. That's the only thing we can do. And then Marty gives him the hoverboard and then they fly off. How did you feel about that?
Them flying off?
Yeah, on the hoverboard.
I mean, it's fine. Like, I guess it's setting up like the reveal when they come back.
Yeah, right.
But they just make such a big point out of like no technology exists in 1885. So was Doc able to make that new time machine just out of parts from the hoverboard? Because the hoverboard would have microchips and you know what I mean?
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. You mean like when he comes back on his steam engine? Because it runs off steam? Or he just waited, right? Because that's a different Doc in a different time period because him and Clara get together, they have kids. So maybe time has gone by. They've just been time traveling the whole time.
But they're in 1885. So how did he make the flux capacitor and all of the things? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because when he goes back, in 2, the reason why he flashes back to 1885, right? It's because he says like the date thing is acting weird. He's like, oh, I got to work on that. And then the reason that he buries it is because one of the chips gets fried. And he's like, oh, I can't make this work without this one microchip. And that technology won't exist until the 40s. So in giving them the hoverboard, does he give Doc the technology necessary to build the new time machine? That's my only thought with them getting the hoverboard, is if they didn't have that, then they would have been stuck in 1885.
That's a great theory.
Because the DeLorean leaves.
The DeLorean leaves and gets destroyed.
Yeah, so he doesn't have any
Nothing.
of the parts. The only future technology he has is the hoverboard.
Yeah.
And when we did the first episode, one of the things that we mentioned was like how every possible detail in that movie is buttoned up perfectly. Tiny little things that you don't think about until you watch the movie 10 times. It's like, oh my God, they create a problem and they write an explanation for it. They create a problem, they write an explanation for it. Up and down that whole entire thing. And this time around, I noticed, it's like, they're actually still doing it, you know?
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
it's not just that Doc is magical and he can make a time machine whenever he wants. He's got the hoverboard.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I never thought like Doc was magical. I just
No, I don't think you're saying that, but like,
yeah.
he just shows up at the end, and it's, you know, there has to be an explanation for it. It can't just be, hey, Marty, I had 2 kids, and in that time I invented technology that won't
Right.
exist for 100 years.
Right.
So the explanation is there.
Yeah.
They're very smart.
They are very smart. The only thing that made me laugh was just the fact that Jennifer's been sleeping the whole time. We joked about that. We talked about that last time, and she's just sleeping. And so when Marty gets back to 1985, he goes and wakes her up, and she's like, I had the strangest dream. And it turns out it wasn't a dream. And this piece of paper I have, it's being erased.
Yep. Yeah, that's... I said I was going to wait till the end.
Yeah, so, okay, take it away.
All right, so you get this great big sequence, and Doc is like, please destroy this thing. Like, Marty, we've been back and forth. Like, this has to end. We can't do this anymore. Marty gets back, and immediately a train just comes and destroys the car. And then he goes to get Jennifer. And I feel like they're still trying to button up a few little things. But at this point, I just don't care about those things. Like the whole thing with needles and the Rolls Royce, that means that Marty in the future won't get fired, because that's what that paper is, right?
It says you're fired.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, yeah, I guess, sure. At the 97% finished mark, I'll be glad that future Marty doesn't get fired from his job. Like, that kind of took me out of it. And like I said, this movie's so nice because it is kind of so disconnected from everything else. So them pulling it back together for a moment, because then Doc comes back and it's back to Doc and Marty again. So that was the part that I was like, I really don't like this.
No, I agree. And then that's when, like, it goes with what you've been saying, like, all episode of we can just kind of let things go, because Doc essentially says, like, you can write your future. It doesn't really matter.
And what a great, like...
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So Doc comes back in the new and improved time machine. And they've got 2 boys, Jules and Vern. How did you feel about that?
I liked it. I'm a fan of Clara and her 2 kids. But again, Clara, you were supposed to die. Now you're not dead. You had 2 kids. Like, you impacted the world big time. But was that always the plan? Because,
well, if they leave 1885 quickly before, like, the kids grow up and have a chance to impact the future, it shouldn't impact too much.
So are they just like they're just time traveling always.
Definitely.
And just in and out. But, like, again, you could, depending on how deep you want to go, like, you can interact with anybody in a store and impact them to have an idea.
Absolutely.
And they can invent something. And
absolutely.
And then are Jules and Vern not supposed to ever, like...
They're men without a time.
Right.
Doc and Clara have cursed them to like a life of non-existence, basically.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like they can't have their own life unless they take over the family biz or whatever and just time travel.
Right. Like I think you have to
go.
pick a time period and say, we live here now and we'll never travel past this point. And so we'll never know the future that we disrupted.
But aren't you disrupting the future where you've settled?
Right, but you'll never know it.
That's true.
You'll never know. Like you have to re-enter the stream at some point.
That's true.
And so if you've traveled all the way back to the past and you've traveled to the year 2500, you pick 2501 and you say, that's it. I'm here now. And
right,
whatever possible future will not exist anymore, but I won't know it.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like this final moment verges dangerously close to being like so cheesy and so corny, but to me, it doesn't get there. Like it's just joy and sentimental, and like there's just no sense of like irony or sarcasm. It's just like Doc is happy. He's got kids, he's got a wife, and he's just like, Marty, the future is whatever you make it, man.
Yeah. You going back to the future? No, I've been there.
Yeah.
I'm not going. I love it. I agree with you. That's how I feel. But again, I'm like, am I fragile? Am I just an emotional person at this point? Do I love? Do I just want Doc to be happy? Or Godfather 3 and Shrek 3 just so bad?
This part makes me tear up.
Oh, I was tearing too.
Yeah.
I think if you love this trilogy, or if you love these characters, you do love this ending. It's really good.
And again, Doc going from the first movie where he's so serious and everything's gonna fall apart, Marty, to this one where he's just like, look, man, I got a time traveling flying locomotive. I got 2 kids. We're gonna go see the dinosaurs. Whatever, Marty. Good luck with your life. Do whatever you want, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like it's such a transition of perspectives, and it's love that showed him that.
Yeah.
And I think it's love for Marty.
Yeah.
You know, we established in the beginning of the movie their great love for each other in the letter and all their experience together, and then the love of Clara. And it's like, yeah, it's like the loosened tie version of Doc Brown. It's like a professor on the last day of classes. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, look, we've been through a lot of stuff, but you know what? Have a great summer, everybody. Class is out early.
It's so true.
I just want to read what he says.
The letter?
No, the last thing he says to Marty, because it's so simple, but it's so good.
Yes.
He says, your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has. Your future is whatever you make it, so make it a good one. It's great.
Someone must have quoted him in a commencement speech.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the best closing words.
Do you know Michael J. Fox did my wife's commencement speech?
No. Oh, unless you mentioned this on our other 2 Back to the Future episodes and I forgot.
It was great. He was awesome. Yeah.
So this movie was made for $40 million.
Amazing.
It made $245 million at the box office.
Wow.
It has a 79% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 3.6 on Letterboxd, 55 on Metacritic.
Whew.
I know.
That is crazy low.
Yeah. It's not a part of the Criterion collection, and it's not in the National Registry. And Ebert rated this 2.5 stars.
Okay. All right.
And then production days, 5.5
Same as Shrek
months.
3, by the way.
Same as Ebert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go into our happies and crappies.
It's time for happies and crappies. Happies and crappies. It's time for happies and crappies. Happies and crappies. It's time for happies and crappies.
So my happy is the scene with Doc and Clara looking at the stars.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
It is great.
I love it. I love their kiss. I love that they're just talking about Jules Verne. And my crappy is kind of lame, but my crappy is the fact that this trilogy is over.
Oh.
And I'm happy because I don't like when things are just like stretched out and like we keep
Yes.
going. So it's good that it's over, but also I'm just sad
Mm-hmm.
that it's over. For us, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Seth?
My happy is Marty doing the moonwalk in the saloon because it's so stupid. It's so stupid. But Michael J. Fox really sells it, you know.
It's great.
And then my crappy is what we just talked about, the whole, you know, race with needles, and obviously it's Marty putting into practice. Okay, I'm confident in myself and I don't need to jump every time someone says jump, right? But tying in the whole disappearing you're fired letter thing, I'm just like, just take it out. I don't care. I ain't walking out of that movie theater wondering what happened with the letter, but okay.
I know,
But yeah.
we should have just eliminated that. Just pick up Jennifer, bring her to the train tracks, and be like, oh, yeah, here's the DeLorean. It got destroyed. We don't need the you're fired disappearing.
Right.
How about Twitter? What are our friends saying over there?
Joe Sparkle emoji at the underscore other underscore JV underscore
Hello.
says, fun fact, this is actually my favorite of the trilogy. And, well, I'll save it. A ton of bricks at a ton of bricks says, I love the deep cinema history references to la arrivée d'un train en gare de la Ciotat when they use a train in this film. Zemeckis really knows his stuff.
And Michelle doesn't.
That's my French. Movies for Days at Movies Days.
Oh, hey, friend.
Good friend Newman.
Newman!
Says, this is one of the best part 3s ever made. The moment where Marty says, Great Scott, and Doc says, I know, this is heavy, is a crowning achievement of cinema. And I agree.
Yeah.
It ain't corny.
No.
Kate Miller at A Kate Dem.
Oh, hey.
I love hearing from Kate.
Love Kate.
She says, I love Leah Thompson's Irish accent in this. But why does Marty's paternal great-great-grandmother look exactly like his mom? And that's a really good question.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So his grandfather, he looks just like her. But that's the McFlys.
Uh-huh.
And Lorraine is not a McFly.
I read...
So why would she look like a McFly?
Right. I read that they... And again, I don't know the source, so don't come at me, but there were talks of getting Crispin Glover to come and play the great-great-grandfather. But that didn't work out because that would have made sense.
It would have made sense for the grandfather, but for the grandmother, it's like...
Right.
Maybe there was a split. Maybe she had a sister who went a different family tree, and that's Lorraine's...
Could be. Yes.
Yeah. And so if you go far back, they're actually related, but far enough.
Right.
Official webmaster John Butter at the John Butter.
I'm trying not to get too excited because I don't want to scare off John Butter, but this is the second week that John Butter is engaging in our show. So thank you so much, John Butter.
I'm sure he doesn't listen. He's just like, yeah.
Okay. Well,
I'll say something funny.
One day, hopefully he'll listen.
Sometimes I wish people didn't listen, honestly, that when we talk about them, because I can't imagine listening to a show and they're like, oh Sethy, that guy, right?
I know.
John Butter says, I just watched this for the first time last year and loved it. And then he says, and I'm going to try to do this in what I believe he's saying. He says, Wiku, Wild, Wicka Wicka, Wild Wild West.
Yeah, like the Will Smith song.
Mhm.
Wiki wow, wiki wiki wow wow west.
Okay,
Jet
you did it
West,
better.
Desperado, Rough Rider. No, you don't want.
Whoa. That was impressive.
I came up with a lot of dances to that song
Ha-
in my living room when I was
What?
a child.
What? Have you seen that movie?
Mm,
Oh my God. You are like the...
am I the most annoying person you know? Probably.
No, but it's like, oh, have you seen this movie? No, but I've ridden the roller coaster of it. Oh, have you seen this movie? No, but I made up a lot of dances to the theme song tie-in with it.
Speaking of which, I have a picture of me in front of the DeLorean and the steam engine at Universal Studios, and I'm just like cheesing, as you can imagine. I'm like, Anne, take my picture.
It's the greatest day of my life.
I love this so much.
The
Okay,
future's what you make it.
yeah.
Vince Stone's girl at Cass Smiley
Oh,
said, "This was my first fave Western. I had no idea how many seeds from 70s Westerns were hidden in this bish." I think she meant to say dish.
no,
Like a
like
food
in
dish.
this bish, like
Like a
up in-
dish. Like
no.
a lasagna.
Sure, Seth.
Like when you're eating a lasagna and suddenly you get a big chunk of carrot.
Are you eating veggie lasagna?
No, because sometimes you put carrots in the sauce as a natural sweetener for the sauce. Like raisins, carrots and raisins.
You're putting raisins in your lasagna?
Oh no, I just put straight sugar in my sauce.
Right. Who's
Yeah.
putting raisins in their sauce, though?
A lot of people, it's a natural sweetener. If
They're
you don't
putting
want to,
raisins in tomato sauce?
yeah, it's a natural sweetener.
I know you keep saying that. that does not fly and compute with me.
Yeah. So if you want a sweeter sauce, but you don't want to add refined white sugar, peel carrots, cut them, and then leave them in big chunks. You can take them out later, but they'll make the sauce sweeter.
I am fine with accepting the carrots. Can
Yeah.
we address the raisins?
Like I said, I don't do it, but I do love a raisin. Oh, I love a raisin.
I love raisins. I love raisinets.
Yeah.
I love raisins and popcorn.
The raisinette is my second go-to movie snack.
Yeah. Well, thanks, friends. Let's go to our segment where we hear from people that we don't know. It's called Half Star, 3-Star, 5-Star. So these are reviews from letterboxd.com, which is an app and a website where you can log, rate, and review movies. We start with a half-star review, which is the lowest rating you can give a movie, and we go all the way up to a 5-star review, which is the highest rating you can give a movie. Seth is going to read our half-star review, and I'm requesting an Irish accent.
Aye.
What?
Aye.
What?
Isn't that Irish?
It sounded like you were doing leprechaun and then pirate.
No, that was just high-pitched Irish guy.
Aye?
Is that a pirate?
Pirate! Do you want to do Doc?
No, I can do. How do Irish people talk? You do it.
I can't. But you know what I realized?
Oh my gosh.
I was watching I was watching a Christmas movie and the character was Irish, and I realized if you listen closely, it almost sounds like an American accent.
An Irish accent?
Yes, like if you listen closely to every single word, I'm like, "Oh, this sounds like an American accent." But then when you listen to the full thing, it sounds Irish in my head.
Wow. I don't know what to say.
I probably
that.
shouldn't have said that out loud. You know how some things it's just like, Michelle, just keep it. Not necessary.
My Siri is set to Irish. I love it.
Oh, Ant has his set to Australian.
So for my GPS,
Yeah.
she's like, at the lights, turn right. I'll do Doc.
Do Doc. Okay.
The Irish thing ain't working out so far.
The last time, right? The last time.
Yeah, Doc for one last time.
Okay.
Marty.
Marty, you just have to shake a lot.
Copernicus.
Oh, Copernicus. I love that.
Einstein. Okay. Other than Marty moon dancing in the bar, this was a disaster. I can't believe they still copied the same scenario from the first two movies. and I thought it's still going to be interesting. Honestly, if there's something below half star. And it just ends there. They stopped. They were like, I'm done.
I can't even write this review.
There's
I'm
nothing below
so
half
upset.
star, so yeah.
Wow, a disaster, huh?
Is it the same scenario?
I mean, there's a formula. It's a formula.
It's kind of the same scenario as the first in that it's like, how can we get this car to work? Oh, lightning strike.
Right, and we're affecting the future. Like, we're affecting the future.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think this is...
No. 3-star review says, wait, so if I'm doing the math right, and Leah Thompson is his great-great-grandmother and a McFly by marriage in 1885, then a descendant Leah Thompson is his mom and a McFly by marriage again in 1985, there has to be some incest happening here, right? Am I reading too far into this?
Yeah, I think that's the only real explanation. But like I said, I think it's far enough back, you know?
Yeah. 5-star review says, Back to the Future Part 3 isn't as strong as the previous 2 entries, but it's still such a solid, entertaining sequel. The direction is great, and the inclusion of Clara as Doc Brown's love interest really works. The train sequence is a phenomenal action piece and one of my favorite scenes in the whole franchise. A perfect conclusion to an untouchable trilogy.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree too. All right, so we rate a movie as a schmovie, movie, or film. We also rate it 1 to 5 stars, give our final thoughts and recommendations. Seth, you won last week. So.
I did.
Okay, so for you, I wrote down 3.5 movie.
Oh, incorrect.
Bummer.
When I watched this, I rated it 4 stars on Letterboxd. Talked about all the different parts that I love and just about how it's so nice to see Doc and Marty doing Doc and Marty stuff, working on the car, building little sets, just playing Right in Time Machine on a little car, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Just two little boys that found each other through time, you know? And this time around, what struck me was that this is a blockbuster movie. And what restraint Zemeckis showed in this third mature 3-parter. Who does that? I can't think of another movie that does that. All of the franchise stuff, it's subtle. It's not super in your face. Something we forgot to mention is at the end in Needle's truck, each one of those guys is one of the actors from each era of Biff's like goons. That's such a cool but like subtle, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They really reined it in for this one. I'm gonna say 4.5 star movie. I really enjoyed it. I think that for me, my ranking would go number 1, number 3, and then number 2. Enjoying all of them. And hey, it took me 36 years to get to this point, but I'm finally ready to say Back to the Future is one of the best blockbuster trilogies ever made.
Bravo. Bravo.
So for you, now I feel a little silly, but for you, I wrote down 4-star movie.
Oh, so close. For me, this is 4.5 star movie. Yeah.
Hey, we put the same thing though.
We put the same thing. Pretty much, not to ditto copy paste, but like I feel exactly the same way.
Mm-hmm.
It took me this long to realize how good this movie is, and my rating when I was younger, I always thought I liked, well, the second one was always my favorite.
Yeah.
Or so I thought. And then after like watching them for our show and like just thinking about them and absorbing them, my rating is 132.
Hey, same.
So same as you. Yeah, it's
cool.
so good. I love this so much. And if someone hasn't seen this for whatever reason and they're a fan of the Back to the Future movies, I'm 100% recommending it.
Yeah.
And I'm always going to recommend this trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about it earlier today. Like, we talked about this, maybe it was I don't remember which episode we talked about, like, what movie would we just put on just to have on in the background? Like if we had to watch
Yeah.
a movie for 24 hours or something like that,
Yeah.
I would put Back to the Future in that.
Okay.
Yeah. And the third one just like brought me so much joy.
Yep.
It's truly special. So, wow. This is a good way to go out on our pickle scale. This is a 4.5 as a jardiniere. So
Very nice. Very
yummy.
nice.
Yummy.
So for the pickle tally,
You still win. You're still in the running.
no increase this week.
No.
Only one pickle on the table. I
One
would love it if our listeners
sad
just
pickle.
imagined like a big banquet table and just one wet pickle sitting in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
But there will be more added, hopefully. Can you imagine if this whole year we don't guess right the whole time?
That would be insane. I mean, that's easy task to do
Mhm.
at the end of the year to give,
Just
whoever gets the one pickle.
Hand me a single pickle.
Unless we're just like constantly passing back and forth one pickle. Not like actually, but every week we're competing just for one pickle instead of multiple pickles or one jar of pickles.
One jar of pickles. Okay. I'll keep it. Well, maybe
It's
next
early
year.
on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's room to grow.
Who
and
gets the
change.
pickle jar?
Who gets
Anyway.
the pickle jar? We pass it back and forth. All right. Does this movie pass the Seth Shell test? And so this movie must contain something tangible that is impressive, whether choreography, production design, or practical effect, and it must have a runtime that is justified by its content. For me, this is a yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. On both fronts.
Both
Absolutely.
fronts.
I didn't mind the runtime. Thought it was great. You get to see Marty Hain for a little bit.
Which actually, that he hung in real life and went and lost consciousness. Yeah.
Not good.
Not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
But yeah, you already mentioned the miniatures. Obviously, the train stuff is all, a mixture of computer animation and trick photography, but it's still very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like 100% on both ends for me.
Yep.
I was
Me
like,
too.
yes, our first movie that passes the Seth Shell test.
Wow, that's kind of crazy.
For this
Well, we've
month.
only done 3.
I know.
Hey, if you've only listened to those 3 episodes, if you're just joining us and you haven't left us a rating and a review yet, now is the perfect time. Look, you don't want to hear me talk. Take the next few moments, open up your phone, okay? I'm just background noise at this point. You're going to go to whatever podcast player you listen to. You're going to rate us. You're going to give us a review. And, don't just say, hey, cool show, like it. Be like, hey, I love them with
Well, don't pressure them. We'll take any review. So
everything in me. And they've changed me. And they're my friends. And I like them. And they're coming to Christmas, okay?
maybe if you're just want to be nice and be our first review of 2025, maybe that's all inspiration. We do
Ooh.
not have a review for 2025 yet.
Yeah, I'm crying in my Cheerios over that.
Crying in your Cheerios.
You can also send us an email, moviefriendspodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you think about Back to the Future, Robert Zemeckis, and his more recent crimes against humanity, or, just this really good trilogy that he made. You can also support the show, patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. $5 a month gets you access to all of our additional episodes. You get access to our patron-only Discord, which is a big group chat where we talk about cats and movies and things like that. You get to vote on upcoming monthly themes and 1 episode a month. Oh my gosh, what the heck?
The power.
And you're added to Michelle's Inner Circle, where you get to decode the message at the end of every episode. You get to play along with a mysterious story, and you get to take part in it. Oh my gosh, what the heck? It's like, I've been describing it, I've been saying it's like a digital escape room. So it's not just, a Christmas story, be sure to eat your Ovaltine, whatever. It's cool, man. There's things happening. All right, speaking of things happening, we're done with January.
What was the name for this?
Tril-uary.
I'm so glad to see that word go, and I'll never say it again.
Trilogy. Trilogy
No.
January.
I get it.
No, I know you get it. It's
Oh,
just
I can't
no.
say it.
Tril-uary. Well, what else would it be?
Tril-uary.
Yeah, Tril-uary.
Tril-uary. Okay, so we're leaving Tril-uary.
We're leaving Tril-uary behind. And this year, our themes are a little weird.
Yeah, as opposed to last year. Jim Lie, anyone?
There are some really funny themes coming up this year. And so for February, we're doing Food-uary. And so these are films that in one way or another either focus on or are centered around or have a big part in food. How do you feel about that?
I love food.
I do too. I eat it every day.
I do too.
Yeah. So we're starting out with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, 1971, starring Gene Wilder. Gene Wilder joins our Three Timers Club.
We got to get jackets, man. We got to give out jackets.
And 1971, directed by Mel Stewart. What is there to say about this? 99 minutes.
I have not revisited this in so long.
Oh.
It's been so long, Seth, and I remember it fondly, but I don't think I've watched it since college. And when I was a kid, obviously I was terrified, which we'll get into next week, I'm sure.
Of course.
But I am so excited to do this.
Oh, me too.
Oh, man. And I'm so glad we're doing this one.
There are several Willy Wonka stories, but
yes.
we're going back to the original.
Yeah.
All right, well, we're both excited. Food-uary. I can't even say it. So
I'm glad
stupid.
that you're tickled by yourself. That's
yes,
good.
Food-uary. Here we come. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Seth.
Hey, thank you very much for listening. And remember, folks, if you can't see past that obstacle in front of you, you're just not thinking four-dimensionally. Till next time, thank you for listening. Have a good one.
Movie Friends is produced by Seth Vargas and Michelle Rubenstein. Theme music by Jean Marie Vargas. Visit us at our website, moviefriendspodcast.com, and please subscribe and rate our show wherever you are listening. You can support Movie Friends at patreon.com/moviefriendspodcast. Thanks for listening.
Incoming. Message incoming. Message to Michelle's inner circle. Remember, kids, only Michelle's inner circle can decipher this week's message. Get ready. Get ready. Get ready. Message number 3. 86. 74. 72. 87. 55. 54. 63. 90. 86. 77. 84. 74. 79. 63. 63. 96. 62. 47. 72. 55. 58. 64. 73. 57. Michelle is counting on you. Do not let her down.